I'm a female, first of all. I'm 21 now, but when I was 4 years old, my sister had just turned 16. She was so excited to finally be able to use her license. It was one of the first times my sister would get to pick me up for my babysitter, which means it would be one of the first times she'd been allowed to drive with me alone. Almost as soon as we pulled onto the main road, a white pickup truck swerved behind us. Weird, but whatever. After a few turns, my sister noticed that the truck was still following her. Even when she would just switch lanes, he was right there switching behind her. My sister, being a bit of a paranoid person, tested it a little and switched lanes several times. She said she heard his tires squealing by his quick cuts to get behind her again. She told me not to worry, and I remember being an oblivious little kid. She looked scared, but I had no concerns. The man started to get really angry. I don't remember anything about what he looked like. I do remember that he had this look of pure hate on his face. Strange that you can sometimes remember expressions, but not the faces they were on. He wasn't angry. He was full of hate. He was honking the horn repeatedly, just laying on it, and he was very close to our car. He was swerving back and forth, trying to get our attention. He would pull up beside us occasionally, flip us off, and honk. The first big event came about when we pulled up at a four-way stoplight. It's a bigger one, so there was a lot of room in the intersection. We were the first ones at the stoplight in our lane, and nobody was beside us. The man used this lane to pass us and pulled his car in front of us almost in the intersection. He was blocking us. I so vividly remember that white pickup truck. He got out of it and started storming towards our car. He was screaming so hard I remember thinking his face almost looked purple. Neither one of us remembers what he was saying, but he pulled up his shirt to reveal to us that he had a gun. He pointed to it and at us, threatening us and closing the gap between us. My sister put her hand over my body, told me to close my eyes, and floored it through the intersection. She said she was worried we were either going to hit him or get hit in the intersection, but it was a better chance than sitting there and waiting for the psycho with a gun. He hopped back into his car and followed us. My house was closer to where we were than my sister's, so for some reason, she decided to go to my empty house. Obviously, he followed us and blocked us into the driveway. He got out and walked towards my sister's parked car, pulling his gun out. Once again, she had to think fast and swerve her way across our lawn back out on the road. This is before cell phones, and she had just started driving and was still young. She had no idea what to do. He followed us back onto our neighborhood road, pulling up next to our car and hitting his truck against us, trying to make us skid or wreck. There is a smallish area of grass between my neighborhood road and a major busy road, and it was obvious he was trying to push our car hard enough to send us into the traffic beside us. He had his gun up on his dashboard still, all within reach. I remember him doing that little gesture where you drag your finger along your throat like you're slitting it, like he was going to kill us. His face was still purple. There was a gas station nearby, and my sister decided on the last thing she could think of. I remember her talking to me so seriously and sternly. She told me she needed me to be a big girl, and the second we pulled by the door of the gas station, to undo my seatbelt and jump out, run inside so fast that I shouldn't even worry about closing my door. I was to run inside and go directly to the person behind the counter and tell him to call 911 because a bad man was following us. We pulled in, she threw the car in park, and I jumped out and did as I was told. She was only a few seconds behind, but she had to actually stop the car, park it, turn it off, whatever. She closed her door and mine for me and just ran inside with me. The man came into the parking lot behind us, and when we were inside, he went through my sister's car. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. They never found him, and we never knew what provoked him or what his plan was. The only thing he took from the car was my sister's ID and the cash she had on her. I was driving a shortcut from 29 Palms, Cavite, Albuquerque, NM. 29 Palms is located in the desolate high desert east of Leh. The shortcut was all two-lane road through total nothingness, except for passing through Amboy Ca. Amboy is a nearly abandoned town nearly as far below sea level as Death Valley, with a dormant volcano and lava field on one side and a salt flat on the other. It was also, at the time, a hotspot for satanic group activity. I was driving by myself in the afternoon. I stopped in Amboy and snapped a picture of the city sign just to prove I was there to friends who dared me to take that route to I-40. I got back in my car and proceeded to drive up into the mountain range between Amboy and I-40. Once I reached the top, I drive north through a canyon with high grass on both sides of the road. Up ahead, I see some stuff in the middle of the road. As I approach, I slow down to see a red Pontiac Fiero stopped sideways across both lanes, a suitcase open with clothes scattered everywhere, and two bodies lying face down in the road, a man and a woman. I stop 100 feet or so away, and the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. Being a Marine, I reach under the seat and pull out a 9mm pistol and chamber a round. Something seemed very wrong. It looked too perfect, as if it were staged. An ambush? Was I being paranoid? Something was just wrong. Getting out of the car seemed unthinkable. It was a horror movie move. As I scanned the road, I saw a line I could drive past the guy in the road on his left, swerve to the right side of the woman behind the Fiero, and I'd be on the other side. I dropped it into first gear, punched it, and drove the line I planned. I passed the back of the Fiero without hitting it or either of the bodies in the road. I continued forward a couple hundred feet and slowed down so I could breathe and let my heart slow down. As I looked up into the rearview mirror, I saw that the two bodies had gotten up to their knees and 20 or so people emerged from the tall grass on either side of the road by the car and bodies. At that moment, my right foot smashed the gas pedal to the floor and did not let up until I had to slow down for the I-40 East on-ramp. I will never know what would have happened to me had I got out of the car to check on the bodies or stopped my car closer to them. Somehow, I do not think it would have been good. Sometimes real life can be scarier than a movie. Back in the early to mid-1970s, my mother and I lived in the Pacific Northwest. I was about 6 years old. We were on an offbeat road right out of Seattle. It was a very dark night, no moon and a wisp of fog. We saw a Volkswagen Beetle on the side of the road with their emergency flashers on and a rather good-looking guy, as my mom describes him, with his arm and a sling waving us down. My mom pulled over, being the kind of woman that would help anybody in need, and he looked normal. My mom rolled down her window and asked if she could help, and the guy asked my mom if she could help him get the last lug nut off his tire so he could change his flat. My mother introduced herself and he said, "Hello, my name is Ted," and then smiled, looked at me, reached over, and shook my hand. He asked my name, and I think I got a bad vibe as well because I said nothing to him. My mom said something about his smile really made her uncomfortable, and then she noticed that he was missing the passenger seat in his Beetle, so she rolled the window back up and said she would call a tow truck to come help him at the next city. She then speeds away while looking in her rearview mirror as she sees him taking off the sling and getting back in the Beetle and taking off very fast in the opposite direction. So that's the night at 6 years old when I shook the hand of Ted Bundy.